Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day as we learn more from the book of Romans, from the letter of Romans, and we ask that you lead us to do as you call us to do, and we ask this through Christ our Lord. You know, one of the things I like to bring out is Father Tom DiLorenzo is here on this radio station as well, and I've been a priest for 30 years. Before that, I was in the seminary for 7 years, and Father Tom was on the radio back then. So it shows you how long he's been on the radio. So one of the things I want to bring out is I remember I was at one of his prayer meetings a long time ago, and someone else who happened to be there said, remember that when St. Paul is writing to the people he's writing to, he's instructing them. He's helping them to understand what they should and should not be doing. Therefore, he's leading them to understand that if they're doing things they shouldn't be doing, that they should now understand that they shouldn't be doing that, and there's a new road to follow. So he's teaching them that's important. And we see in today's reading, this comes from the 6th chapter of Romans. And remember, anything we read here, you can find on your favorite daily missal. And, we use, I always mention several types. Bible.usccb.org is online. There's a bound version of the daily missal you can find either online, meaning you can order it online at your favorite bookstore, your Catholic bookstore, or you can also look at subscription versions such as Magnificat, The Word Among Us, was it The Word Today, I think is one. Anyway, they're out there, and you can look them up, and you can find them. So that's where we take our readings. And so I don't read the readings here, but you can look them up. And so today we're coming from the 6th chapter of Romans. Now, we talked yesterday about the noosphere and the whole thing where the one fall brought sin into the world, but through Jesus and his living the law perfectly, we brought redemption into the world. And so we're seeing that. And we're looking at this whole thing. Well, now St. Paul, as I'm saying at the beginning of the show, St. Paul is explaining that we're called to turn from sin. Well, go back to what I said yesterday. There were two paths. Remember, now Jesus talked about the two paths, but what are the two paths? The two paths are the imperfection introduced by the fall of Adam and Eve and the perfection introduced by the death and resurrection of Jesus. So, which path are we called to follow? Obviously, we're called to follow the path of perfection that was put there by the death and resurrection of Jesus. So that's what we're called to do. So we're called to follow a different path than the rest of the world that is not following Jesus, and that different path is rooted in the wisdom of God. And that wisdom of God grows. This is one of the big things that's happening with the Synod that a lot of people don't understand, and it's an extremely important part. In the Synod, what they're explaining is ultimately that our understanding of how we're called to live our life grows because our understanding of everything it is based on grows. So just as if we go back 500, 600, is it almost 600 years now? Let's see. You know how bad my math is. No, I think we're still in the 500s. 21. Okay. No, we are in 2023. Isn't this awful? My math is that bad. And we go back to the 1500. 2000 minus 1500 is 500. Okay, we got that down. So isn't that awful? So in any case, so we're going back 500 years. All right. And we know a lot of morality back 500 years ago, and a lot of the saints lived the morality and everything else. And science had a great understanding then, but not as much as an understanding as it does now. Okay, so our knowledge of our world is greater now than it was then. Well, that also works theologically. So our knowledge of how to live in our world grows, and this is what the Synod is all about. Going by all that we have learned since the history of the church beginning, how do we live for the 21st century, and what is our mission? How is our mission of the salvation of souls changed because of our deeper knowledge? So we see all that, and we're looking at that. Well, we understand that too when we realize, and Paul basically brings that up, when we see this new understanding, we realize that there is this new path set by Jesus by his death and resurrection, and we follow that path. That path represents also a new understanding than the way the path went before. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts.
Don't forget to tell others where they can find our program. You can hear us on WEZE 590 AM and WEZEradio.com at midnight and 3 o'clock in the morning, Monday through Friday, Eastern Time. We then podcast the program on your favorite podcast platform and at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also hear us on our parish website, ST for StAnthonyAlston.org. That's StAnthonyAlston.org. And let others know where they can find us and spread the word and subscribe to our podcast.
We're back, and we're talking about this powerful reading from Romans. So what St. Paul is now teaching the people, remember who he's teaching. He's teaching some Jews who will be known as Messianic Jews. These are Jews who believe that Jesus is the Messiah, and some Gentiles who have to learn from day one what is the Jewish history from which Christianity comes. And so we have both of them. And he's teaching that there is this new path from the path they had been followed before. And with the Jews, they were following the law. And so everything was based on the law and doing what the law says. But now there is a deeper understanding besides the law. And Jesus says he hasn't changed the teaching that is at the base of the law, but he's deepened it. So now there is a the path takes a different direction, and now he's teaching that. So our focus is to follow this new understanding, and this new understanding comes from the death and resurrection of Jesus, who has now put an end to that old path and given us a new path. He actually hasn't put an end to the old path. You can still follow the old path that is rooted in original sin, but now you have the choice to follow the new path. And that new path is that we live a whole different way of life, completely different way of life. So we don't follow the same way that is based on just the law, but we follow the new way that is based on the law that Jesus followed. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. So you want to do what is pleasing to God by doing what God would want you to do for your neighbor. Okay? So that's where it comes down to. And that's a whole different direction. So the old direction, and we're not necessarily talking about the old law, but the old direction that person may have lived may be, I'm going to do what I think is right, what these philosophers over here think is right, and please do understand, I'm not condemning philosophy this way. Philosophy is trying to say like philosophy is bad is like trying to say that science is bad. Science is huge. Philosophy is huge. But so I'm saying those philosophers, whoever they may be, and it's all hypothetical. So I'm not going to listen to what those philosophers are saying, because those philosophers are teaching this very fine point that actually doesn't match with this new understanding I have. Do you see where I'm coming from? And so I'm walking down this new path that is asking me and telling me that I'm called to please God by loving our neighbor. That means love God, love neighbor. So that means a different direction than I would have walked down before. Do you understand? So, for example, if there is, if I see someone freezing to death and I have an extra coat that I just happen to have, and I don't need this extra coat to prevent myself from freezing to death, and I hand it over to someone, maybe the philosopher would say, well, what did you do that for? You could have sold that and you would have still retained some form of ownership of that garment through the money that you made, but the Lord said, the man is freezing to death, help him out. Well, that's the new direction I'm going to follow. And I'm not going to worry about the money part. I'm going to worry about helping this person who is struggling. Okay? And maybe the person, once it warms up, leaves the jacket so you don't actually lose the jacket in the long run. That was a gamble you made, and that's what happened, but you were all set to let it go. Do you see? It's a whole different direction. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day.
I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.